Good evening. I'd like to call to order this regular meeting of the Round Lake Area Board of Education on March the 13th, 2023 in the Round Lake High School Media Center at 7 p.m. If I can get started first with a roll call, please.
Mrs. Klingler?
Here.
Miss Julie?
Here.
Mr. Francisco?
Here.
Mr. Jewett?
Here.
Mrs. McGinley?
Here.
Mr. De Vera?
Here.
All right, and first up, let's do a Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, board, if we could make sure we have our phones off the table and on silent. And first up is an approval of the meeting agenda. One slight update, the CEDAW Governing Board recap is going to be removed from the communications to the board. We're going to push that to our next meeting. So if I can get a motion to approve the amended agenda.
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Jewett, seconded by Ms. Lee. Roll call, please.
Mr. De Vera?
Yes.
Mrs. McGinley?
Yes.
Mr. Jewett?
Yes.
Mr. Francisco?
Yes.
Mrs. Klingler?
Yes.
Miss Lee?
Yes.
All right, first up then with the approved agenda are our special recognition and presentations. And this is a big one, we love it. Our Round Lake High School state qualifiers.
All right, this is an exciting night, and we have a packed house tonight, everybody. So can we get that on camera, please? That's awesome. This is really an exciting night. Each month I've got an opportunity to come up here and recognize some of our students, and Ethan's got a chance to come up here and recognize some of our athletes. And tonight we get to recognize our students who are competing at the highest level. Everyone that's going to come up here tonight and be honored got an opportunity to compete in our state level competitions in both activities and athletics. So first I want to kick off the night with bringing up our chess team. And I want to let our coaches from our chess team, Mr. Warren and Mr. Miller, come up here and say a few words about their team.
All right. Thank you so much for having us here. This is my fourth year at Round Lake High School. Same with Mr. Miller. One of the first things I did getting here was start a chess team. And honestly, I've been blown away by the support. I've had Mr. Miller on board since the beginning. We've had, student interest right from the beginning, and we've been growing every year. And just the district support has been incredible. So I want to thank everybody for that. And then the students are the ones that deserve most of the attention here. In February, we participated in the annual state chess championship tournament in Peoria. We brought 7 players down, and we won 3 matches. We had a big kind of growth year from last year. We're expecting to continue that trend moving forward. So all the way on the end here, we have our captain, Alan Zambrano, senior. Next to him is freshman Emily Vargas, who just joined us this year. Next to her is another freshman who just joined us, Martin Arguelles. And then next to Martin, we have Gio Hernandez, who actually won 7 out of 7 of his matches this year at state, which is pretty incredible. We're missing 3, Cesar Hernandez, senior, Maritza Hernandez, junior, and Justin Locke, a junior, are also on the competitive team. They couldn't make it tonight. So thank you so much. We appreciate it.
All right, next I would like to bring up Miss Aiello, and she's going to recognize a member from our speech team.
Good evening, everybody. Thank you so much for allowing us to speak about our wonderful students. For the past 4 years, I have had the honor and privilege of having Carolina on the speech team. She is also one of our co-captains. And just to give you a little highlight, because I know speech team is not as well known as some other events, there's 14 different events that kids can speak in. And Carolina has done over the past 4 years humorous interpretation, dramatic duet acting, declamation speaking, and an original comedy. I knew I would forget something. So over the past 3 years, she has placed at sectionals, and in order to move on to state, you have to be in the top 3. So not only did Carolina at sectionals place in the top 3, she took first place. And Carolina's event that she took first place in is declamation speaking. It's where you take someone else's speech and memorize it and perform it as though it's their own. And Carolina's topic was about speaking about conversations that make us uncomfortable. So highly relatable at this time. At state, she is also my first state qualifier. So that was very exciting. And at state, out of 100, I went through and looked at all the numbers. Out of 160 kids throughout the whole state who did declamation speaking, she took 12th. So thank you very much for your time, and congratulations to Carolina again.
All right, next up, we're going to bring Noah Shustef up, who's going to honor our state wrestlers.
Hi, thanks for having me again. Start off talking about our 2 boys who qualified for the state tournament. William Cole, our heavyweight, and Alejandro Cordova, who's coming up right now at 113 pounds. Ton of accolades for both these guys. For Alejandro, I guess since the last time I was up here talking about him, was a regional champion. Ended up winning two matches down at the IHSA state tournament, which ultimately results in a top 8 finish. Unfortunately, Illinois doesn't wrestle to 7th and 8th place, but so automatically the 2 wrestlers who lose in the consolation semifinals are considered 8th place finishers. We're pretty sure Alejandro would have taken 7th. He's just been a model athlete and model representative of our program. For Will, it's been an interesting story because Will's only a sophomore. And it's rare for a sophomore to make the state tournament, let alone a heavyweight sophomore. You typically have upperclassmen in those weights, and they're typically a lot bigger than Will, quite frankly. Now, Will's a pretty big boy, hence the nickname, but he's one of the more athletic heavyweights, so he doesn't have as much of the girth behind him that he has to deal with in his matches. And even at that, he took 5th place at the Al Dvorak tournament. Now, for those of you who don't know, that is one of, if not the toughest tournament in Illinois, and one of the toughest tournaments in the country. Where teams come in from all over the country to wrestle at that tournament. So we kind of knew when Will took 5th place that we had something special here. And he did nothing to dispute that. He ended up 7th place at the Mid-States tournament up at University of Wisconsin, Parkside? Whitewater. Thank you. UW Whitewater. He was a regional champion. He was the Lake County tournament champion. He was second place at the sectional. And then, if not for an untimely elbow injury in his first match downstate, probably would have gone quite far in that tournament. Again, the good news is that he's only a sophomore. Alejandro's only a junior. We fully expect to be up here at this time next year, hopefully with some medals, celebrating these guys and others next year. So really great job to you guys. All right, and now it is my pleasure to introduce our two female state qualifiers in wrestling. And we have Riley Concow at 100 pounds and Ireland McCain at 115 pounds. On a personal note, coaching girls wrestling has probably been the highlight of my coaching career, particularly in this district, if not every district I've been in. The growth of the sport and the effort that the girls put in is just admirable. So as far as this season goes, Riley had pretty much top 3 finish in every tournament he entered, right? With 2 or 3 first place finishes. We have a tournament every Saturday. You kind of lose track of them after a while. And then took second place at the girls sectional at Evanston High School, and downstate finished with a top 8 finish. Now the girls sectional at Evanston High School had over 50 teams, and many brackets were over 16 girls, so it was not an easy tournament, to fight through. Ireland is our 2-time All-State, 2-time place winner, and only a sophomore. I'll let that sink in for a minute. Now, Ireland took 5th place last year at the state tournament. She took 6th place this year. The 6th place finish this year means significantly more than the 5th place finish last year, and I'll tell you why. Girls wrestling in Illinois has seen exponential growth from last year to this year, to the point where even the IHSA said that they didn't anticipate it growing as much as it did. I don't know how they could have not figured that out, but that's what they said. So last year at the state tournament, in Ireland's matches, I think we looked back at it, and was it 5 matches last year that you had to wrestle about? I think only 2 of the 5 matches were difficult, if we can call it that, as far as they were tough matches, hard fought matches. A lot of the matches Ireland was able to get on the mat and get off relatively quickly. This year, all but 1 match were extremely difficult. The caliber of girls wrestling has improved that much over the course of a year, to where finishing an all-state finish at the girls' tournament is really, really impressive. If you look, a lot of the nationally top-ranked girls in wrestling in the country are in Illinois, and they pretty much took the top 3 podium finishes at almost every weight. So really, really impressive season. Not an easy season by any stretch for either of the girls. Riley dealing with kind of persistent ankle injuries. Ireland having a fairly significant shoulder injury not that long before the sectional tournament, where we weren't sure if she was even going to be able to compete. So needless to say, extremely proud of these girls. And one other thing I do want to mention, Ender Conkow, can you stand up real quick? I just want to, yeah. Nothing that the boys or girls achieved this year could have happened without Ender. Ender was our volunteer coach. He's a former wrestler, Brown Lake High School graduate. Ender pretty much was willing to get on the mat. He'd roll around with Alejandro, and then 30 minutes later, he'd roll around with Big Will. It didn't really matter. It's amazing he lasted the entire season. But also putting in a lot of the work outside of the practice room, breaking down film, working with girls, pretty much anything that was asked of him, he did it. So he's a really, truly valuable member of the coaching staff. So I just wanted to recognize him too. So thank you.
And there goes the full house. Dun dun dun. All right, next up on communications to the board, we have our BPAC update.
Good evening, everyone. Exciting night with all the athletes. This Friday, March 17th, from 6 to 8 p.m. at McGee Middle School, we have our last mental health and substance abuse awareness seminar, sponsored by Advocate for this school year. Advocate is committed to continue supporting 3 more years of this parental involvement program in partnership with BPAC. Friday, 24th, from 6 to 8 p.m. at McGee Middle School, we have our last BPAC Parent University for this school year about the power of reading. We already have our calendars or programs on events for next year. And something new, on April of next school year, BPAC is planning to host bilingual dads in education. We're well to start creating a community where we all learn how to support our students at home and school, how to have positive conversations with our students, and how to monitor our students' usage of technology. We're very excited. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, next up is the FOIA report. Any questions from the board in regards to the memo and on the FOIA report? Hearing none, we'll move on then to contracts less than 1,000. Looks like we had nothing to report this cycle, so we will step forward and continue moving there. And next up is public comment. As always, members of the public may participate in public comment during regular board meetings by attending in person or by submitting electronic public comment form. Please note that speakers are limited to 3 minutes. Electronic public comments will be accepted up until noon on the day of the regularly scheduled meeting, and the public commenter will be contacted to confirm identity. Once confirmed, the electronic public comment will be provided to all board members in written form, and a link to the electronic public comment form can be found in the online documentation. We did not have any electronic public comment this cycle. Do we have any public comment? Yeah, we're good. All right. So next up, we will now go to committee reports, and I believe we have an update from the Community Engagement Committee. Yeah, I skipped on. He's fine. Okay, fine. We'll go to the superintendent's report. My bad.
Thank you very much. I'd like the board and the audience, both here and in live stream, to join me in congratulating and thanking Miss Liz Dampf, Director of Professional Learning, for her most recent contribution to ASCD Educational Leadership Magazine. Liz's article, School Leaders, It's Time for a Well-Being Self-Assessment, was posted on March 2nd. Liz is now a regular contributor to ASCD. And I would just tell the board, ASCD is one of the big ones. So there's a few that are widely known across the country. So where's Liz? Is she here? There. Congratulations. Thanks for continuing to represent the district in such a positive and professional way. And if you've ever read her writing, it's like super impressive. So just very appreciative. As a gentle reminder for the board, plans are in place to hold the Round Lake High School graduation ceremony at the Round Lake High School Stadium. The two middle school ceremonies will be held in the Round Lake High School Gymnasium. Friday, March 19th, 2023 at 6 p.m. is the high school graduation date, and the middle schools are Saturday, May 20th, Round Lake Middle at 9 a.m. and John T. McGee Middle School at 11:30 a.m. I'm sorry, May 19th. May 19th, yes. No, it's not happening in a week. So, and the middle schools are on May 20th. The Lake County Regional Office of Education will host their annual Educators of the Year Awards banquet on Wednesday, May 10th. Ms. Garcia, if you would make sure that's on the board members' calendar, that would be great. I'm pleased to announce that Round Lake District 116 will be submitting 27 nominations in the following categories: classroom elementary early childhood teacher, classroom middle school teacher, classroom high school teacher, classroom diverse learner teacher, school or district administrator, student support personnel, educational service personnel. Just want to thank the team here and also our principals for being proactive at recognizing the great work of our talented staff members. So we're very excited about that, 27 nominations. Ms. Bennett, do you know when we actually find out, or is it the evening of? Okay, we'll give you more information on that when we get it. So that concludes the superintendent's report.
Thank you. Any questions for Dr. Mendoza? All right, hearing none. Now we'll move on to committee reports and the Community Engagement Committee update.
Okay, so we met earlier today, and after some quick housekeeping things, one of the first things on our agenda was the partnership program update. If you guys remember, we approved to partner up with Hanover Research back in, I think it was December. Prior to Hanover, we were exploring the NNPS, which was kind of a partnership with, they had done research with Johns Hopkins. It was, and I have to look at my notes, so forgive me, but Dr. Joyce Epstein's framework for six types of involvement, excuse me. At the time, we kind of, we had some really, really good framework there, but we were struggling with plugging it into our district as part of our formal, like, strategic plan. So Heather had mentioned some of, Hanover has shared some of their research with us, and after looking at their library, we're thinking that instead of doing like a full-scale intervention, as it were, we're just going to use some of the resources that they had provided, and kind of as a better use of the partnership, some of the resources that they provided, we're going to kind of implement in with some of our schools in with the SILTS teams. So we haven't, like, it's just sort of a informal thing. We haven't planned it yet, but we're thinking that the SILT teams can sort of use the information that they provided in their SIPs that are upcoming. But if you look at the packet, it kind of discusses some of the approaches that they have in relation to, if you see the Epstein model figure, there are 6 sort of types of community engagements, and then it kind of goes over, excuse me, I've lost my computer's being crazy, excuse me. Kind of goes over some of the framework, and the SIP goals focusing on academic, behavioral, and equity, and then they talk a little bit about school family partnership framework. So we just kind of had a little bit of a discussion about that and kind of how we're going to be presenting it to those teams to allow them to kind of formulate their plans. But it's still in its early stages at this time. Anything you guys want to add on that? Forgive me. Okay. So the next thing was the school mascot review update. As you guys know, we've had some discussions in and around the school mascot for Indian Hill, the name of it, the mascot as well. We are thinking that this is a dialogue that needs to be had, but probably a little later in the year. So we're thinking we might push it back a little bit to May, since we have some bigger ticket items that we want to focus on. We feel like this needs like our attention, and we want to give it that attention that we need. So, and then any questions on that? Anybody want to add? The next thing we have is the social media analytics. If you got a chance to look at that, you'll kind of notice that there was a drop in the athletics. That was due, if you guys remember, there was an issue with some like stream bots creating some issues with that. So it kind of inflated our numbers. The only, I think, call out that we want to say is that overall there's been some pretty marked improvements in the year over year on the postings. There are some small inconsistencies between Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Some of those are very legit, in that some of those platforms limit the photos, number of photos that they put on, and etc. But overall, we see an improvement. So we are seeing some very good things happening in that, in the social media. So we just wanted to call that out. Other than that, that's kind of all we discussed. Did you guys want to add anything additional? Okay. Anything? Okay. So any questions or anything?
Actually, I have a couple questions. So on the partnership program update with the Epstein model, I know Hanover provided information, but have we looked or are talking to other districts who have implemented this model?
So when we talk about implementing the model, it's really a piece of it. Last year we looked at the National Network for Partnership Schools, which is Epstein's full model. It's like a much larger plan than what we're looking at in that table that's attached to today's packet. When we spoke with Hanover Research, we had the potential opportunity to go full-scale research project with them this year, but we felt like the resources that were made available to us through their library provided us with enough resources to move forward to build our plans and what we're proposing through the SIP planning process heading into 23-24. Within that research that we received from Hanover, it cited specific areas of research within the Epstein model, so those 6 types of involvement that Mrs. Klingler referred to in her update. So when we initially started looking at opportunities for formulating a formal partnership plan, that's how I came across NMPS, by looking at other districts that had utilized their format in the years past. I'm not familiar with any that are using it today as they have it outlined in our area, but they are a national partnership organization. So, and we have the benefit of seeking the resources that those partnerships, schools and districts utilize each year, and the events and activities that they are creating that are directly aligned to the 6 types of involvement. as part of our work here in district. So we can access those resources. They're just not like directly in our area.
Wait, so we're not implementing the full model of the 6. You're just kind of taking what's going to work for our district.
Yes. So last year when I looked at the full NNPS model, it was quite large and kind of exciting when we first saw it. But as we talked through the process of implementation in the district, we found that not everything within that plan, as pretty as it was, necessarily fit our district. So through Hanover's research and the resources that they've provided to us, we feel like in conversations with teaching and learning that there are bits of it that we can pull into our SIP plan, so that we're gradually moving into creating kind of a larger framework of involvement, but through that SIP goal planning process.
Okay, yeah, because I looked at it and looked at other schools that were using it. It's a pretty intense plan. That's why I was thinking, how would we take that on?
The NNPS model had, for example, something called an action teams for partnership, where each individual school would have their own team outside of SILT, outside of the school improvement leadership teams. That would involve the principals and teachers and who may not be on SILT, and then parents and community members. Really cool concept, but given where we've been, especially the last several years, probably not something that we can fit into our planning going forward. So that's when we sat down with teaching and learning and developed another plan that would work well for our district, utilizing those same resources.
Thank you. And then I have a question on the social media analytics. So I know we see the reporting on like athletics and kind of the main ones, but are we doing any analytics on the sports and club social media? Are we monitoring those?
No, not at this time. So those are individual accounts that are set up by the coach or sponsor for those activities. Within the platform of Loomly that we have right now, we have a limitation on how many accounts we can actually have within there. So no, I don't have direct access to those analytics of the individual sports and activities at this time.
Do we plan to moving forward? I think it is, I mean, it is under our umbrella, so to speak, so we should be having that data and access to it and be able to report out on it.
I can definitely look into that as an option, and checking with what other school districts do too. I don't think that's normally something that they track as on the individual basis, but I'll definitely check in with other school districts to see how they actually gather that information, since oftentimes they're not under one umbrella as we have our schools.
Okay, I still think it's something worth reporting because it's part of our communication, so we should be monitoring it and still reporting data out so that we see either where our shortfalls are or what needs to be addressed with those, because it's out there in the public representing our district.
And even positive nature as well. The successes that we're seeing from the athletic side, and how can that translate?
And are you talking about the individual sports?
And clubs,
Like
yeah.
baseball and
Football,
football and so on?
the chess team, all them, they all have their own social media that they're putting out our information.
And the same thing with the band, Round Lake Music, Round Lake Guard.
Okay, continuing with the social media. So in looking in the analytics reported, so when we look at the schools, I'll just use Facebook as one of them. We see some schools have higher output than others. Are there some benchmarks that we give our schools to make sure they're meeting them? So, because I mean, I'm looking at this, but this doesn't tell me if we're meeting those benchmarks, if we're expecting our schools to do A, B, or C. Obviously, high school being a lot different than the elementary, and elementary from middle school.
At the start of this year, we meet with all of our webmasters and set those minimum benchmarks for posting, and every one of them are meeting them, and in most cases, like blowing them out of the water. So we'll be looking at resetting expectations for next year as far as social media goes. This year we've got like rock star webmasters at our schools and the different activities that you see listed here. So obviously, very capable of doing higher than what the expectation was at the start of this year, which I believe it was minimum of 2 posts per week. So obviously we're well above that in most, if not all, of the different accounts that we have.
Okay, because when I look at like October of 22, I think it's Alice because the orange and peaches kind of run together, or maybe it's the theater, I don't know. The smallest graph or bar.
The last one is the theater posts. So those are lower than what we'll see at the building levels.
Okay. Is it possible in this analytics to also note what the benchmark is? So when we're looking at this, I know where we're meeting and where we're not or exceeding.
Sure, I'll add that. And
Okay.
it will change for next year too. So
Okay.
just note that.
Thank you.
The one thing I want to say, I'm not sure, this just popped into my head, and this is something we'll just have to not negotiate. We'll have to explore. I'm not sure, and I generally don't know. I'm not sure there's social media expectations posted in coach job descriptions. So when we start talking about minimum number that a coach is sending out, I think that's something potentially we may have to negotiate. Potentially. Heather, do you know? Do you have any information on that?
We don't meet with the coaches or sponsors that have those individual accounts. Our webmasters that receive hourly rate for the postings that they do at the schools, that's who we meet with regularly. I don't even think that it's a requirement that coaches or sponsors actually have a social media account set up for their program.
And Miss McGinley, I don't know if, did I understand it though? Is that what you're talking about, individual coaches and?
Well, I don't know.
Potentially.
I don't know who's pushing that out for those clubs or activities.
Right, it's generally
But-
the coach or assistant, that's true, you're 100% right. I just don't think we have, again, I don't know, so I'll look, but I don't think we have, okay, if you're a head coach or you're part of this team, you need to send out X number of social media posts per season or anything. I just think it's something we have to look at.
But whether we have that expectation or not, we should still be monitoring
100%.
what they're putting out there
100%.
and still providing that data to the board because it is an output of this district.
Oh, collecting the data, I think is easy. I don't want to say it is if it isn't, Heather, so, but I think collecting it is easy. That's not where I was going, but.
No, the collection is easy as long as they're under our umbrella within Loomly. So I would just need to get a better handle of how many accounts we actually have out there with all of the sports and activities to then know what I'm giving to Loomly for a quote for that type of service.
But I hope we still know what those are because I would hate that a coach or whoever, a sponsor, creates a social media account through the platforms and we don't know about it because then we can't monitor what they're putting out there.
So as of today, we have social media guidelines that state exactly what the expectations are if you are to create such an account. But I do not require, as of today, a list of all of those accounts to be registered with the school district.
I think we should because they should not be out there haphazardly. They still are an output of this district that should be monitored by this district. Does anybody disagree? Or?
I definitely do not disagree. Actually, yeah, because all of that is our public facing persona, 100%. So we need to make sure that we have controls on it.
Absolutely. All right. That's all my questions. Thank you.
Those are good questions. That's all we have, actually. Thank you, guys.
Thank you. And now let's go to some approvals.
All right. I need a motion to approve the February 27th, 2023 regular board meeting minutes.
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Mrs. Klingler, seconded by Ms. Lee. Roll call, please.
Mr. Jewett,
Yes.
Mrs. Klingler,
Yes.
Miss Lee,
Yes.
Mr. Francisco,
Yes.
Mrs. McGinley,
Yes.
Mr. Tavera,
Yes. Motion carries.
I need a motion to approve the February 28th, 2023 special board meeting minutes.
So moved. Second.
Motion by Ms. Lee, seconded by Mrs. Klingler. Roll call, please.
Mr. Tavera,
Yes.
Mrs. McGinley,
Yes.
Mr. Jewett,
Yes.
Mr. Francisco,
Yes.
Miss Lee,
Yes.
Mrs. Klingler,
Yes.
Motion carries.
All right, I need a motion to approve the consent agenda for the accounts payable report for $680,454.89. March 13th, 2023 employment report.
So moved. Second.
Motion by Ms. Lee, seconded by Mrs. Klingler. Any questions? Roll call, please.
Mr. Jewett,
Yes.
Mr. Tavera,
Yes.
Mrs. Klingler,
Yes.
Mr. Francisco,
Yes.
Miss Lee,
Yes.
Mrs. McGinley,
Yes.
Motion carries.
All right, old business. I need a motion to approve the 2023-2024 student fee schedule as presented.
So moved.
Second. Motion by Mrs. Klingler, seconded by Mr. Tavera. Any questions or finance feedback?
That was reviewed, thank you. That was reviewed at the last finance. Again, there are some increases in our fees, athletics and fine arts, but it is supported by the finance committee.
Roll call, please.
Mrs. McGinley,
Yes.
Mr. Francisco,
Yes.
Mr. Tavera,
Yes.
Miss Lee,
Yes.
Mr. Jewett,
Yes.
Mrs. Klingler,
Yes.
And motion carries.
I need a motion to approve the property tax relief grant abatement in the amount of $4,247,016 and approve the transfer of funds received from Fund 10 to Fund 30.
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Francisco, seconded by Mr. Jewett. Any questions?
If I can just provide some context into this recommendation. Again, this is the property tax relief that Dr. Kivin spoke of at the last grant or finance meeting. Again, this grant is for 2 years. If you'll notice in this recommendation, different from a previous one, where we speak to the transfer of the funds from Fund 10 to Fund 30. So when the funds come in, then we can transfer. This way we don't have to come back at a later board meeting once those funds are received to ask for the action to transfer those funds. So we wanted to put the motion all together so that way Dr. Kivins can complete that all at once.
Hearing no additional questions, roll call, please.
Mr. Tavera,
Yes.
Mrs. McGinley,
Yes.
Mr. Jewett,
Yes.
Mr. Francisco,
Yes.
Miss Lee,
Yes.
Mrs. Klingler,
Yes.
Motion carries.
All right, new business. Need a motion to approve the LinkedIn job slots recruiting tool for a trial of 6 months in the amount of $2,337.50.
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Jewett, seconded by Mrs. Klingler. Questions, feedback?
Again, this was at the last finance meeting. This is Human Resources Department wanting to do a trial period with LinkedIn. Again, another way to promote and get our positions out there. This is a trial period and they'll see how it works and they'll report back if we want to move forward for a year or additional time.
Sounds good. Hearing no additional questions, roll call, please.
Mrs. Klingler,
Yes.
Miss Lee,
Yes.
Mr. Francisco,
Yes.
Mr. Jewett,
Yes.
Mrs. McGinley,
Yes.
Mr. De Vera,
Yes.
Motion carries. All right, now we are to the positive occurrences part of the conversation.
So, I mean, I know you guys went to the All Music Festival. I had the chance to go to both the Saturday in the morning and Saturday afternoon. I just have to call out how talented our kids are. I can't believe the level that they play. It's just impressive for me personally. I'm always stunned at how good it is. There were just several standout moments where I was like emotional and just proud of our kids. And then right after that, the guard team went to Hersey and won second place. So I just wanted to call that out too because I was proud of them. But it was just more of our kids being awesome.
There was one I failed to mention last week that I wanted to make sure we mentioned while we had the full board is the pizza challenge. Several of us on the board got to judge the Organic Life Pizza Challenge, which was a high school and included the middle school this year. So hopefully we'll add the elementary in at some point. But it's always wonderful to see the kids cooking and being creative and seeing what they conjure up with the ingredients and pizza crust. But it really is a lot of fun. And I know Mrs. Klingler mentioned the fine arts band festivals. I attended on Friday to watch the fifth graders, and I really just wanted to give kudos to Dr. Mendoza. They always have a 50-50 raffle, and Dr. Mendoza won, and there was like, oh, he doesn't need the money. But Dr. Mendoza gave back the money to the boosters. So as a parent, as a fine arts booster parent, it is appreciated, and I know everyone was really appreciative in the audience when he did that. So thank you for that. Baseball Spirit Wear is out, so they have their store up and running, so hopefully you can support them. And then, we had our Spring Lake Division dinner last week, and Dr. Orzel was the presenter, and it was very interesting to hear her speak, serving in a district that was taken over by the state and issues they have with their board, and it was kind of a deja vu for myself, having lived through the state takeover and being on the board and helping us come out of that. So it was interesting to hear her talk and hear her perspective as a superintendent. So that was probably one of the best ones we've had in a long time.
Best in the business for nothing over here. All right, then we will now move on to future agenda items. Anyone have any future agenda items they want to add to future conversations? I'll take silence as none. So we will then move forward to approval of some closed session minutes reviewed at prior meetings.
I need a motion to approve the release of previously unreleased closed session minutes from January 2021 through June 2021.
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Francisco, seconded by Mrs. Klingler. Any questions? Roll call, please.
Mr. De Vera,
Yes.
Mrs. McGinley,
Yes.
Mr. Jewett,
Yes.
Mr. Francisco,
Yes.
Miss Lee,
Yes.
Mrs. Klingler,
Yes.
Motion carries.
All right, I need a motion to approve the open session March 13th, 2023 regular board meeting to approve the destruction of audio recordings of closed meeting dated June 2021 and prior.
So moved.
Second. Motion by Ms. Lee, second by Mr. Francisco. Any questions? Roll call, please.
Mrs. Klingler,
Yes.
Miss Lee,
Yes.
Mr. Francisco,
Yes.
Mr. Jewett,
Yes.
Mrs. McGinley,
Yes.
Mr. De Vera,
Yes.
Motion carries.
I need a motion to approve closed session meeting minutes of December 5th, 2022 regular board meeting.
So moved. Second.
Motion by Mr. Jewett, seconded by Mr. De Vera. Questions? Roll call, please.
Mrs. Klingler,
Yes.
Mr. De Vera,
Yes.
Mrs. McGinley,
Yes.
Miss Lee,
Yes.
Mr. Jewett,
Yes.
Mr. Francisco.
Yes. Motion carries. And that will bring us to an adjournment. We are adjourned at 19:50 p.m. on 3/13. Everyone have a great evening.